So, how does a country go from a shared dream to a devastating war against itself? Well, it doesn't just happen overnight. It's more like a series of dominoes, right? A chain of events where each decision, each so-called compromise, just pushes the country one step closer to the edge. Let's dive into that domino effect that led America right into the Civil War. Okay, picture this. It's the mid-1800s, and there's this huge idea sweeping the nation called manifest destiny. It was the belief that the United States was, destined to expand all the way across the continent. This painting right here, American Progress, it just nails that whole feeling. You've got settlers, railroads, and light pushing west. But hiding in that beautiful vision was a massive, unresolved question that was about to set the whole country on fire. And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? How did this incredibly hopeful vision of growth and progress lead directly to the nightmare of civil war? How did the dream curdle? That is the question we are going to unpack today. It all really kicks off with new land. Lots and lots of new land, which unfortunately brought a very old and very dangerous problem bubbling right back up to the surface. The first big domino to fall was the Mexican-American War. See, after the U.S. brought Texas into the fold in 1845, a fight over the border quickly spiraled into a full-on war. And for the United States, it was a quick and decisive victory, ending with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And wow, what a victory it was! Just look at this map. Through what was called the Mexican Cession, the U.S. got a massive chunk of land. We're talking future California, Nevada, Utah, and more. A huge win for Manifest Destiny for sure. But it created an equally huge problem. And there it is, the one question that would haunt every single political debate for the next 10 years. For every square mile of that new land, the country had to ask, will it be free soil, part of the industrial North, or will it be slave territory, expanding the plantation economy of the South? These two competing visions for what America should be were suddenly in a head-on collision. So what did the country's leaders do? Well, they did what politicians do best. They tried to compromise. But here's the thing. They treated slavery like it was just a political headache to be managed, not a moral catastrophe. And these compromises, they weren't cures. They were just band-aids on a mortal wound. And each one just delayed the inevitable, and honestly, probably made things worse. The Compromise of 1850 is a perfect example of this. It was a classic political balancing act. Okay, so for the North, you get California as a free state, and the slave trade is banned in the nation's capital. For the South, you get a much tougher fugitive slave law and this new idea of popular sovereignty for the new territories. It created this very fragile peace where, honestly, nobody was happy. Now, this idea of popular sovereignty, it was pushed hard by Senator Stephen Douglas. And on the surface, it sounds pretty democratic, right? Just let the people who actually live there vote on whether to have slavery. Simple. But what it actually did was toss out the old Missouri Compromise line that had kept the peace for 30 years. It basically opened the door for slavery to go anywhere. And that brings us to the next big domino, the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. This law took that idea of popular sovereignty and applied it to land that was north of the old compromise line, territory that was supposed to be free forever. Well, that just ripped the old Band-Aid right off. The North went ballistic. They saw it as a total betrayal. And this single act led directly to the creation of the Republican Party, which had one main goal: stop the spread of slavery, period. And as one of our sources puts it so perfectly, these political deals were exactly what they looked like: Band-Aids to stall the Civil War. They weren't solving anything. They were just kicking the can down a rapidly shrinking road. And eventually, you just run out of road. The political compromises had failed so spectacularly that the debate wasn't just happening in Congress anymore. It was spilling out onto the frontier and even onto the Senate floor. Words were turning into actual blows. So this is what popular sovereignty looked like in the real world. Pro- and anti-slavery folks flooded into Kansas, not just to settle down, but to fight for control. It turned into this brutal, bloody preview of the Civil War, earning the territory the nickname Bleeding Kansas. And this breakdown of civility wasn't just happening out west. No, in 1856, right there on the Senate floor, a congressman named Preston Brooks beat Senator Charles Sumner nearly to death with a cane because he didn't like his anti-slavery speech. The violence had officially reached the very heart of the American government. It was shocking. And if there was any tiny shred of hope left for a legal, peaceful solution, the Supreme Court just blew it to pieces in 1857. In the Dred Scott decision, the court made two explosive rulings. First, that African Americans were not citizens and had no rights. And second, that Congress had no power to ban slavery in the territories at all. I mean, the impact of this was an absolute earthquake. The Dred Scott decision basically made slavery legal everywhere in the West. It wiped out the entire reason the Republican Party existed and made the North absolutely furious. Any middle ground that might have existed for a compromise, it was just vaporized by the highest court in the land. So, all of this set the stage for the final domino, the presidential election of 1860. The country was so polarized, so angry, that the simple act of voting for a president would be the thing that finally broke the Union apart. And you can see just how fractured the country was by looking at the candidates. You didn't just have two choices, you had four. The Democratic Party itself split in half. You had Lincoln saying no expansion of slavery, Douglas still pushing popular sovereignty, Breckinridge for the pro-slavery South, and then John Bell just saying, hey, can't we all just get along and save the Union? And the results? Well, they tell the whole story. Abraham Lincoln wins a clear majority in the Electoral College. He was going to be the next president. But here is the kicker. This is the single most important fact of that election. Lincoln won the presidency without winning a single Southern state. Not one. The more populated North had enough political power to elect a president that the entire South had rejected. And for the South, that was it. That was the proof they needed that their voice was gone. The reaction was immediate. The dominoes didn't just fall, they fell with terrifying speed. South Carolina was out the door in December of 1860, and then in the weeks that followed, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, they all followed suit. Think about this. By the time Abraham Lincoln actually took the oath of office in March of 1861, the country he was supposed to lead was already broken. 7 states had already left and formed their own country. The time for band-aids and compromises was long gone. The stage was set for war. And that leaves us with this one big question, looking back at it all. All of those compromises, all those band-aids, they were all designed to save the Union. But did they ever really have a chance? Or because they treated slavery as a political balancing act instead of a fundamental moral crisis, were they just delaying a conflict that was, in the end, truly inevitable?